Hello and welcome to eCommerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. In today's podcast, we're tackling the question, buy, never knowingly undersold. Don't worry, we'll explain what we mean in a moment. I'm Philp Huthwaite, the founder of BlackCurve, almost a decade in the pricing space, and I'm joined by Dr. Rob Horton, although this week he should probably be called Dr. Rob Workflow. More on that later.
Dr. Rob Workflow. Dr. Rob Figma.
Dr. Rob Figma. Are you all right, Rob?
Yeah, I'm good. I have stable internet again, thanks to the wonderful people at BT, deciding that I'm allowed a line rather than. I think they've been in a bit of a panic around here actually, in that they fixed someone else's and managed to take out the rest of the building when they fixed it. So.
Whoops.
Yeah, so apologies for any stuttering last week, but you can blame our internet overlords for that.
B and maybe a T somewhere in there, but other broadband providers
are available, but they're the guys that messed it up. So.
Well, it's not them; it's Open World. I don't know. They're all quite incestuous. Well, it's nice to know that you've been making use of our very expensive office that not many of us have been using recently. So that's at least something out this week, isn't it?
Yeah, I was tempted to go and film today. Maybe next week. We'll do like a final episode live from the BlackCurve office or something.
We should definitely do that.
We've got to show the listeners the shed, you know.
We should definitely do that, and it's probably a good thing we didn't call the podcast eCommerce Shed or something, because it might have been a bit short-lived as we moved out of that location. I'm in a bricked structure. You get
upset when I call it a shed. Yeah,
there is no wood in my surrounding. Just it happens to be in the garden. So enough about our various, adventures outside the office. Let's talk about the podcast question. So we're talking about buy, never knowingly undersold. And for those of you who don't know the slogan, never knowingly undersold is a price promise by a retailer, a very large retailer in the UK called John Lewis. I am a previous John Lewis partnership employee, so I feel very strongly about this company, although it was Waitrose, so it wasn't the John Lewis side of things, but I was a partner and I did collect my bonus a couple of times, so I think it's a fantastic company to work with. But we're not talking about that, we're talking about their price promise. So let me just set the scene here, and I'm going to sort of quote some of the press here, worldnews.com. For 95 years, John Lewis has never knowingly been undersold, and that is now no more. The High Street store has basically said that after 200 years, they are dropping this slogan. The Dame Sharon White, their chairman, has told the Sunday Times the move comes after 70% of their business sales are now being made online. The brand's slogan basically promised to refund the difference if customers purchased one of its products but found it cheaper elsewhere within 28 days. The caveat to that it couldn't be an online-only retailer. It had to have some physical bricks and mortar presence. It was first used in the company in 1925, and I'm sure, Rob, you've been doing some research about the origin of this slogan, and especially, they expected online sales to grow, but the lockdown has basically increased this. Where, I think last year they quoted 40% of their sales were done online. Now it's 60 to 70%. They're sort of forecasting the sales to be this year through their online website. So that's a lot to take in. I hope the listeners are still with us. So, Rob, should we start? What was the origin of this particular slogan? Why did John Lewis decide to adopt it in the first place?
Yeah, so I actually in the research for this, I found quite a cool little website that does it's called Creative Review, and it goes through and takes a brand or a slogan and deconstructs it. And so fortunately they've done my homework for me, which is quite nice this regard. But it's interesting, but it says that the policy was actually, the policy is an internal policy, predates the 1925 when the slogan came out. So it's always been core since the first shop in 1864, basically. So that kind of price match promise, or that has been core to John Lewis throughout, well, for almost 150 years, I guess, which is crazy when you think about it. And then a lot of what you said is all right, is correct, in that like the first time it was publicly expressed was in 1925 in the Sloane Square shop, and then it was rolled out everywhere else in 1926, and then has been a core part of the branding. You can look at gift tokens from the 1950s that have the slogan wrapped around it and the rest of it. So this is actually a pretty significant shift from a positioning. It's almost a complete rebranding of the company's values, moving away from this kind of price matching or price competitiveness, as it's called.
But why do we think that they adopted it in the first place? I mean, what does the literature tell us that why did they decide to have it?
But it's you gotta, I guess you've got to bear in mind that like the 1860s, 1920s, even the 1990s are very different to now in terms of information gathering. So back then, as in now, if you're getting a fair price or showing a fair price is a core element in trust building, right? So if I go to John Lewis, I know even if I find it at a different price elsewhere in another shop, I know that doesn't matter, right? Because I can still buy from John Lewis and they'll refund me the difference, and that's fantastic. Nowadays, that's much less of an issue due to the ability to access the internet. I can price match. You probably do it. I do it. Expensive purchase. I'm in a shop. Look at it online. What's the difference? I can do that immediately. So that trust, I don't need trust in the same way because I can call them out on it immediately or choose to go elsewhere. I can either speak to the sales rep in the store and say, well, this is 20 quid on Amazon, 20 quid more expensive or less expensive on Amazon. Can you do me a discount? Or I can just buy it on Amazon. So the whole kind of shopping experience, I guess, has changed to do that around that.
So does price generate trust? Is that what we're saying? That
I think
you trust the brand?
Fair price does, right? It's not it's not price gouging. It's the I mean, if we want to go very historical, it's being able to trust that the weights and measures used for when you're buying your goods are correct, right? You used to have people whose job was to go around and check that merchants were using the right measures because it was so you're not ripping people off, and that has become much easier to police that kind of side of it. So as a fair price is almost just kind of self-policed and expected rather than a trust building exercise, right? In that I don't have to trust you because I can see it for myself, because I can just go online and see if I can find somewhere else.
I mean, it is quite interesting that actually John Lewis has got this price promise of never knowingly undersold, because I suppose it enables them to regularly check the market, but it doesn't mean that they have to be the cheapest. It just means that they're going to do what they can do, and then if somebody finds it cheaper, they'll honour it. But it's why does John Lewis?
So that actually, just on that point, it's quite interesting because I did stumble upon an article by Money Saving Expert who weren't very happy with John Lewis's promise, because apparently they ran a study where they found 10 products that were like more expensive than John Lewis, reported them, and then watched the prices over 14 days, and they didn't change. So John Lewis's promise isn't actually at the individual level; it's at the shop wide. So I think they were kind of, I mean, and John Lewis's excuse was, well, we have a price management team; they're usually on it, but they've just missed this set of products. And I think the reality is that the margin compression has been hammering them for a while, and they haven't been wanting to do this for a while and think they can get away from it. And it's just gating yourself into a competitor-led pricing strategy at the brand level is probably not a smart thing to do in the current marketplace.
Because I suppose it's, fun. What would typically happen is that you'd go into the shop, or you'd say, look, I bought this product from you, or I found this product, and then they would at the till refund you that difference, whereas that doesn't automatically mean that on their website or on the actual ticket in the shop it's going to automatically change, right? So I think the over time probably there's been a reluctance to really proactively. I mean, I know John Lewis do check prices phenomenally regularly, but it's how quickly does that get reflected into the shop
Yeah,
front.
the cynic in me would say it's like delay repay on train tickets, in that they like putting it there, but they really don't like paying it out. To the point where they actively lobby and I shouldn't go off on this tangent, but to the point where it's a significant loss in revenue for the train company because of the way the system is set up. So they kind of, up until recently, have been actively making it difficult to claim that back. And I imagine it's similar with the price match promise. For someone who can be bothered to go through all of that, fantastic. But realistically, most people, even if they spot it, just go, oh, it's not worth the tenner. I'll just get on with my life.
And you multiply that out over, multiple products, you're very quickly at millions of pounds, right? And that's the saving of not doing it. I mean, I used to change tickets on the shelf edge front of. I used to change. Have I lost you there, Rob? You've gone all robotic.
No, I'm back. Sorry.
I mean, I used to change the shelf edge tickets there, and it used to be quite a laborious task, right? Even if you had one row of a supermarket, it would take you a good hour or so to change just the ticket prices of those products. So, we haven't got digital shelf edge technology. So, I can kind of understand. I can understand, that it's harder to change prices in your physical store, and I can understand that there's sort of there can be an aura of cynicism in it.
So I should say I think this is a very smart move, because it's the difference between value-based pricing and competitor-based pricing, right? In that John Lewis provides value in a whole host of other ways beyond being the cheapest. I find this interesting because I don't think of John Lewis actually as a cheap brand, right?
Well, I was actually going to say earlier, before I went off on a different tangent, it's funny how John Lewis have got this never knowingly undersold price promise, whereas Waitrose, which is the same partnership, has got in the UK this perception that they are, it's not luxury, it's not Harrods, but it's the upmarket supermarket. So it's quite bizarre that they've got.
But I'd argue that for John Lewis as well. The people I know that shop in John Lewis are posh, like in the nicest, because it's expensive. Like, the goods are expensive, so it's weird. There is a brand tension there when you say, yeah, we're the cheapest on these expensive goods.
That's absolutely fair. They've typically got more expensive brands. I mean, I suppose it's also, I always laugh when people say, oh, Harrods is expensive, but it's almost like, if you're going to get a comparable products at Harrods, yeah, okay, it's probably on the money, but if you're going to buy a diamond ring, you're not going to necessarily find it cheaper elsewhere, because they're selling luxury products.
This again is where the slogan is weird, because for me, the association with John Lewis is, well, apart from the Christmas advert, is quality, right? And like good warranties, and so you're buying a better quote unquote branded product. You're getting a warranty, you're getting the customer support, and all the rest of it. And that's why traditionally, at least people I've interacted with have shopped there, not because they're the cheapest on that specific product. So it seems weird to basically have to pick this fight unnecessarily, almost, because it doesn't lie up with kind of your core brand value.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, also, like, people shop there because it's a one-stop shop. It's a department store. It's just easier getting. You can buy a T-shirt and a toaster at the same time. Mm-hmm. I mean, and some curtains. It's like it's this crazy, this amazing product mix. So, and I think this comes down to, everyone always talks about the price promise being, well, it's trust building. But trust doesn't mean you be the cheapest. If you've got trust, you've got pricing power. And if you've got pricing power, you don't have to be the cheapest. End of, basically.
I think it's interesting. We were talking about this in the prep for this, but I think it is interesting to compare them to someone like AO, who still do have a price match promise, but they might be, in this move to a new online world, they might be moving away from that. But I think what you were saying that you thought that the price match thing for AO is a more sustainable uh, business strategy than John Lewis. I don't know. I think that was an interesting contrast.
Yeah, because I mean, if it comes down to product mix, I mean, we were touching upon it earlier around,
Mm.
or John Lewis sells more expensive products that might not be necessarily available elsewhere. The same thing applies for if you're looking at like AO.com or you're looking at other appliance retailers. I mean, there's Appliance World, Appliance City, Appliance something else. But ultimately, what they're doing is they're investing in a product mix that other people don't have. So you can have this you can have this perception of, right, we're never knowingly undersold, right? But if your buyers can make sure that they've got a product mix that is differentiated from the competitors, that there's stuff that other people can't get, when you're having that conversation with the customer, it's not like for like, it's different, right? And so this is how I don't want to say get around a price promise, but this is how some of the retailers are doing it to get around a price promise, because you're not comparing like for like, and also making sure that the product offering is offering something else that you can't get from elsewhere. I mean, a perfect example of that might be getting a different color of a product that other people can't get access to, and people associate value to that. Oh, I really want that in red, I can't get it elsewhere, okay, I'm happy to pay a premium for that. Or if we come back to appliances, oh right, this hot point washing machine. I mean, okay, I'm not a washing machine expert, but by any stretch of the imagination, other than be able to put the washing in. But when we were buying our washing machine,
modern man.
yeah, I know, the modern man. But like, they make sure, right, this drum has an extra, I don't know, 1 litre capacity or something, and that might be, hang on a minute, actually I am finding my old washing machine doesn't give me that capacity, and it means I do one less load, and if you can get those parameters that aren't available elsewhere, this is how you can detach this price.
Yeah, I mean that's. I think that's bang on. I've got a slight advantage in that someone I know is a buyer at John Lewis, and whilst I haven't spoken to, it's my brother's friend, and whilst I haven't spoken to him for about a year or so, we were talking about this, and they've been focusing on their product heavily on their product selection, because also when you think the scale of the store, they can broker agreements that other people can't. So if you're in price match territory, you're kind of in easily accessible, kind of ready supply chain goods. Lots of players in the marketplace, lots of people can get them in. But if you're a big player, you can say, well, I want exclusivity to this, right? And then you're competing at a product level or product availability level, which is is a much sensible attack vector than just saying, well, I reckon I can get my cost base down lower, which you should be able to again at scale. I mean, that's the Weatherspoons model, but like it's one of those I feel is a much more defensible position, and is even more defensible when you go through significant periods of disruption, like we've just gone through, where if you're an established store, it is much harder for you to pivot, say, on to online only or predominantly online if you weren't lined up that way. There have been notable examples in the US of big brands who have really struggled to do that, purely because of the infrastructure and the staffing and just the way everything's set up, and the internal systems, the operations are not pointed the right way. And fundamentally, if you're saying I can be cheapest on a like-for-like thing, you're saying I can be most efficient. And in a drop shipping age, where someone like me can spin up a shop, basically not have to touch very much, it's going to be hard for you with all your overheads and infrastructure to compete with someone like me who can build everything themselves and manage it at arm's length.
Well, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head, and that was going to be one of our next discussion points around, bricks and mortar store versus online. I mean, if the slogan is very clear in the terms that they only match somebody who's got a multi-channel approach, so they do have bricks and mortar stores. But if you think about it, John Lewis has got probably some of the most expensive real estate in the whole country, right? They've got the likes of Sloane Square. They're on Oxford Street. I think they've just pulled out of the Bullring, haven't they? The suite, but they've got the place in London, Westfields, right? These are all expensive, overheads. Okay, and if you're competing against, the likes, even somebody who's got a blend of bricks and mortar, like if you're competing against Comet, okay, is Comet still around, right? Dixon's Carphone, Dixon's Warehouse, and all of that. They're all changing. They're all changing so much, but they typically have their real estate in out of town, units that are cheaper. And so it's like, okay, fine, you can compete against these guys, compete against PC World, but their overheads are probably slightly cheaper than you. So this is where it is a risky game. It is a very risky game.
And that's bang on, right? Because it goes back to what we were saying a minute ago, but it's bizarre that you're competing on price when you're positioning yourself on Oxford Street, right? Look at the other brands around you. If you're looking at department stores, you've got Selfridges, right? You've got Liberty. These are, I was almost swore, but like these companies do not care how much they charge you, because that is not what they're competing on. They sell a fair price for the goods, but they do stuff like, all right, I can do a whole episode on Liberty, by the way, because I think Liberty is a bloody excellent brand and do brand marketing like. So Liberty do this thing called the Liberty Advent Calendar, right? And have you come across it?
Is this Liberties as in the really old-fashioned one
exactly.
just off Regent Street? Yeah.
And it's an advent calendar where each day is like a beauty product that they've sub-selected into, and it costs like 200 quid. And it is the best piece of marketing I've ever seen, because it upsells you into the product. Plus it's amazing. This is kind of weirdly where John Lewis is in my head. It's in that kind of territory. It's not in your Comet, Curry's, PC World, Dixon's kind of end, because you're on bloody Oxford Street, right? And that is the weird, and it's not actually like Oxford Street. You've got a big presence, right? It's not like you've got one of those slither things, like, or you're down a side alley like a game or something like that, where you've got the presence so people can Google it and pick the game up, but you're not building that brand and advertising and sticking your name right across it, right? So that's kind of that is the bizarre tension, that they've got this almost price matched promise anyway. Like,
yeah, no, and it's almost the whole brand as well is. It is kind of a bit of a mothership that you can turn up to. You can hang out there all day. Well, you used to be able to, right? You can hang out in the cafes. You can go to the opticians there. You can get your wedding list there. You can have some champagne there. Like, none of those things that we're talking about. The immediate word that would come to your mind after that is cheapest. So, yeah. so I mean, tell me if I can get champagne at TK Maxx and I'll be there. But it's that kind of thing. It's not.
I think we should go into marketing, mate. Manny, you're out of the job.
Champagne can solve any problem. There we go.
I don't disagree with
that. So I think it is a danger, and I think it might be a good point to go on to a bit more of the dangers and our, the theory, and also what we see from a competitor pricing point of view, why it's such a problem having this sweeping statement of never knowingly undersold, because you're almost blindly following other bricks and mortars prices, but making it difficult to follow them. So it's why is it silly to follow competitor prices? I mean, we've already touched upon it.
Insert BlackCurve diatribe, but like the core thing for me with a brand like John Lewis is, even if you are selling the same product, is it a like for like match, right? We have this conversation all the time with our clients, and actually more often with prospectives, or as people are becoming clients, is that what constitutes a competitor for you, right? A lot of the time, you've got a very busy space, but there are 4 or 5 guys that you actually want to compare your prices to. Guys, girls, companies, whatever, insert thing. But like, and those are the ones you care about, and those you probably want to build some kind of market benchmark around. But the rest of them, in, out, whatever, they're not like for like, because they may not offer the same level of service as you. They may not offer the same warranty as you. uh, all the rest of it, right? So the first thing is that before we go into like the benefits of just a blind competitor matching strategy, is that are you even by doing this doing a like for like comparison? And that actually is the core difference between value-based pricing and competitor-led pricing strategies, because this is a flat, well, Rob's shop is selling this fridge for £100 less. Rob's shop needs to do that to get the advertising in Google to get enough turnover in. And Rob's shop also has 4 fridges. So what he sold those for, he doesn't have any more, and it's going to take him 6 months to get more in. So just like anecdotally, you can see the danger in that, because basically 4 people get the fridge from there. Okay, you've lost 4 sales, but if you're managing your sell-through and you're stocking correctly, it doesn't matter, right?
I mean, I know that was an extreme example, but it does resonate. So, and when we look at like for like, does Rob's shop have the same return policy? Is it 30 days or is it 365 days? How easy is it to return it to Rob's shop? How easy
Very
is it
hard,
to get it back? Is somebody going to come and pick it up from me, or am I going to have to put it in the post and pay for it to get sent out? What's the level of warranty on it? Is it the standard 1 year, or do you top it up and give me an extra 2 years or 5 years on some circumstances? If I have a problem, have I got a tech team that I can call up and go, oh, I know you sold me this laptop, but I'm really struggling with this. Can you help me through that? Can you help me through that pain? Or am I going to have to self-serve and go into the depths of various online forums to try and work out the problem? And this is what we mean by like for like, is not necessarily always just literally like for like product. It's the whole experience of buying the product. Okay, so it's that whole, do you get that warm fuzzy feeling? Do you get that champagne when you buy it? Do you get, do you get the reward at the end of the year if you spend so much money? Are you part of a club? And all that service wrapper as well. That's what we mean by like for like. You've got to take the whole piece. And also, you can't underestimate the power of brand, right? I mean, how many of us, it depends what social circles, but people do say, oh, I bought such and such from John Lewis, and you feel like, oh, you feel great about it, because you're part of that club. And there's all these sort of underlying elements that contribute towards like for like, and there's sort of obvious ones around service levels and so forth.
My second big issue with it, before we get into the technicalities, is you've written your pricing strategy on your website. Like, I can body you. I can actually body you. I can. Sorry, I'll stop using vernacular, but I could come up with a competitive strategy directly against you because I know how you're going to do it. So I know, for whatever reason, that I get these products cheaper than you because my supply chain is more efficient. I'm going to get a war on that, and then I'm going to put out some advertising, more so in the US maybe than here, but I'm going to say that we're the cheapest on this. And then we're going to hammer your margin, and you do damage to you, because I know that you have to react in that way, because you haven't given yourself the flexibility to not enter into a price war.
Well, I mean, we're going to do a future podcast of inadvertently, and are you inadvertently price fixing? But to a certain extent, you are, and you're saying you are. I mean, I don't want the legal team of John Lewis to suddenly turn up on my door, but this you are in this theoretically you're in this risky territory of saying, if we're never knowingly undersold, basically you are inadvertently price fixing because you are inadvertently following other people's prices. I know it's come from a safe, trust building space, but as you say, you've just put it out there for the world to see.
Look, like 150 years ago, completely get it. 50 years ago, I completely get it. But in the rate and the acceleration of technology over the last 30 years has just blown this kind of stuff out of the water, because the other side of it is that, like, if you're not, this is why I was kind of chuckling about the money saving expert example, is that if you're not set up with this automatically to do it, so you can guarantee it through something like BlackCurve, but like a pricing engine or a rules-based system or whatever, you can't keep up with the people who are. And you're going to get people coming into your shop on a number of days with wildly varying price differences, and you won't know when people are having a sale. You won't know all the rest of it. So just operationally, it becomes a pain. Whereas if the price is the price and it's quote unquote fair in the market and people buying it, you're just saving yourself a headache. I mean, realistically.
Yeah, and it's important to note that we're not saying making decisions off your competitor data is a bad strategy. That's not what we're saying.
What we're saying is only doing it and telling people about it is a bad strategy.
That is a bad strategy. But also we're saying that there's a time and a place to follow the market, right? There are bread and butter products which, you know, people don't care that you're John Lewis that buys this product. They don't care where they buy it from. It's day in, day out. I don't think anyone's ever gone, I got my bleach from Waitrose. You know, nobody's ever said that. Well, they might have done, but you know, there are certain bread and butter products that it doesn't matter where you get it from. I
completely agree with you, and this is where we go back to the product mix part. In that, I think this is part of a broader move by John Lewis to compete differently and ensure that they have products that other people can't get, brands that brands and models of those brands that are harder to get, because that again it's like you say, then you can set the price, you dominate the market. I imagine the John Lewis customer base is pretty loyal. I don't know a huge amount about the company and the makeup, but I imagine a lot of the people who buy at John Lewis are the kind of people who get comfort from buying at John Lewis. So what they need to do is maintain that exclusive feel, that kind of premium feel. I'd be amazed how many people even knew this was their slogan, or this is what their slogan meant in a sense, because it's just kind of like we were saying earlier, attention against how we both seem to think of the brand, right?
I mean, I think it depends how paranoid you are as a buyer, right? And how much you get buyer's remorse after you've purchased something from one place, and whether or not you're going to check that you've got it cheaper from elsewhere. I think that it certainly helps that type of buyer.
Sure.
I mean, certain circumstances, I've been told off for doing that. But actually, if we think about it, it's generally the more expensive purchases, right? If you're spending over, I mean, we all have different perceptions of what expensive is, right? But if you're spending, let's just say, more than 100 quid, right? You're probably going to be more pissed off if you find it cheaper elsewhere than if you're spending 20 quid and you find a few kind of pounds difference, right? I know that's sweeping generalizations, but it's the larger purchases that you're doing less frequently that you're probably more likely to use this price promise for. Okay, I mean, I for one can be lazy from time to time. So am I really going to bother to try go back and get a refund? But again, we shouldn't make one data point in ourselves as a representative.
No, there are a lot of people actually. I think we're both bad at. It's funny given what we do, but like, actually, I don't shop that much, but the people who do shop who are incredibly price driven, and it is a key differentiation. And I don't think even if they take the slogan away that they're going to stop doing it either. It's more I think a lot of it is to probably to avoid the brand damage or the confusion around it. In that, I imagine if you went to them and still said, "Well, I found exactly the same freezer, but it's 100 quid less here. Can you knock it down by 100 quid?" They're probably, the sales staff will still have the ability to say, "Yeah, absolutely," because rather you make some margin than no margin, right? But I think it's the building the brand around it with the shift to online, with the change in kind of supply chain and infrastructure, and where the basically where things are made, and that kind of scale and operational efficiency being largely democratized by a lot of SaaS companies in the middle, has meant that actually this kind of at scale price matching isn't a great vector to compete on just at the brand level. Absolutely, like there are still going to be products that they have to do it on, but it's more just overall, I think.
I mean, I'm going to do a pitch to John Lewis now. If you want to pick up the phone and talk to us about how you should manage your pricing and how you should make your price decisions going forward, I'd love to sit down and have an opportunity to talk to you about how you should do it, because you have a phenomenal opportunity now to find out, and you may have already done this. I may be teaching to suck eggs now, but of finding out, if I invest in this part of my business, how much pricing power does that give me in the marketplace? Right, and it's managing that test and learn, looking at the sales figures, making adjustments, looking at my stock levels, making adjustments, looking at my review scores, making adjustments, looking at my product mix. If I change my product mix, what does that mean, and how I can do my pricing? Because also, if you think about it, one of the things that we haven't touched about, why they have pricing power, is if you look at Next, they have a phenomenal online bricks and mortar strategy that you can literally up to midnight order a product and get it the next day, pretty much. Okay, I don't know the full ins and outs, but assuming that the product is available, they can get it to a store for you to get access to it the next day if it's not in that store. I mean, that is pretty damn cool, right? So John Lewis, by having the infrastructure and the bricks and mortar stores and having that spread and having the product mix, they do have power in that, and it's how they can also make use of that. That's what's exciting, and that's probably also one of the reasons why they've gone, hang on, I can't pick in a minute. We've been a bit silly here having this price promise for so long. But it's one of those things that it's hard to let go. I mean, it's inert. They've had it for, what was it, almost 100 years, 95 years. I mean, I always forget how old I am, but I'm 33 and I haven't had anything as long as am I 33? I think so. I haven't had anything for as long as that, right? And I look back at things I have had for a long time, and I'm like, bloody hell, that's old. 95 years is a long time. You're going to struggle to get rid of that.
It's longer than everyone I
know. I have the good fortune to know someone who's 101, and if I can get to 101, I will be very happy. Although the downside of it is that I know that they are not a fitness buff. They smoke and they do all the things that you shouldn't do to get to 101. Right, I mean, so it's clearly live life and prosper and be happy. That I think that's the solution.
Do you think before we tangent off again, I do think it's worth saying very briefly, or explaining kind of exactly why we think this is a bad strategy, and I'll do that through the lens of how we kind of talk clients to our customer success piece. So it really isn't too trade secrety, but what we tend to do is we look at where we've made price changes, and then we look at basically where they've worked, whether increasing profitability or decreasing profitability, right? Not rocket science. We've got one lever, as we all seem to quote. I heard George quoting it the other day. So obviously that's becoming our new internal slogan. We've got one lever, price. We can move it up, we can move it down, or we can keep it the same, and then we measure the response, right? That's all well and good, but actually the real depth to it is looking at where it hasn't worked, or where it's gone against the theory. So in John Lewis's case, say you made a load of price increases and volume is maintained, or you've made money, or gone up. It's likely that a lot of those products, when you drill into them, aren't competitor driven. So you don't want to be price matching on it, because people aren't buying them for you for that reason. Conversely, there is a section where you drop the price, usually to match competitors, and volume doesn't change or decreases. And again, those aren't competitor driven either. They're just low demand. So you're sacrificing margin there. And so if you bake this kind of price matching into your core brand, you lose that nuance, and you lose the ability to kind of unpick your pricing strategy and segment your inventory and really work out, well, I have to follow with these because these are competitor driven, but these are completely independent, so I can charge more for them, happy days, and all the rest of it. And it's really losing that segmentation, which is our main issue with this. I guess we're not saying that you never have to price match, because you do, but we are saying that you probably don't have to price match from everything.
You have a habit of this, of the last few, of doing the summary exceptionally well. So I'm not going to say anything else, unless you've got anything more to add. You'd like to add, Rob?
No, I've just got the advantage of being on the customer success calls. So.
He's got the cheat sheet. You heard it here first. Well, bye-bye Never Knowingly Undersold. I think it's absolutely the right decision for John Lewis. It's in exciting times that they've got ahead of them. And it's fundamentally clear, just to agree with Rob, that we're not saying you don't need to follow your competitors, but you don't need to follow them all the time. And you certainly shouldn't have your pricing strategy on your website for all to see. So good luck to John Lewis. I wish you every best of luck in the future, and I think the future is going to be bright, especially as you're moving to online and getting more sales there. We have been BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. This is our podcast, E-Commerce Matters. You're available to subscribe on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple, Spotify, and much more. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next time. All the best.